You'll help set up for the charity dinner on Friday, right? Victoria's message popped up on my WhatsApp, her usual commanding tone evident even through text. I stared at my phone, feeling that familiar knot form in my stomach. Another demand, not a request. What charity dinner? I typed back, watching the three dots appear and disappear as she composed her response. Maxwell's fundraiser for the Children's Hospital. Everyone important from his bank will be there, she replied, followed by a string of detailed instructions about tablecloths and centerpieces. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wasn't invited to this dinner, I wrote carefully. Well, of course not, dear, came her swift reply. It's all investment bankers and their wives. You wouldn't really fit in with your, well, you know. But we need your help with the setup. You're so good at these things, Evelyn. I let out a long breath, my throat tight with familiar disappointment. Once again, I wasn't good enough to be a guest, but perfectly suitable for the behind-the-scenes work. I'm Evelyn, 32, a pediatric nurse, and to my family, I'm little more than their reliable backstage crew member. The one they call when they need someone to arrange flowers or ensure everything is picture-perfect for Maxwell's endless parade of career achievements. That's fine, I replied, my composed message masking the anger bubbling beneath the surface. What time do you need me? 4 o'clock sharp, Victoria responded immediately. We'll need time to set the table, arrange the flowers, and plate the appetizers. Oh, and could you pick up some extra napkins? The good ones from that store you know. The ones we used at Maxwell's promotion party. Sure, I typed, my jaw clenched. You're such a lifesaver, Evelyn, she sent, followed by a barrage of detailed instructions about the exact shade of napkins and the precise way she wanted the place cards arranged. I set my phone down on my desk at the pediatric ward, the familiar sounds of the hospital suddenly a welcome distraction from my family's demands. I'd moved out years ago to escape this exact dynamic, but somehow, the physical distance hadn't changed anything. Looking at my phone screen, I noticed a notification from a restaurant booking app one hadn't used in months, suggesting a table for one at my favorite bistro this Friday night. My finger hovered over the screen, hesitating for just a moment before I tapped reserve. For once, they could handle their perfect dinner party without their backstage manager. By Thursday afternoon, my phone was buzzing constantly with messages from the family group chat. Don't forget those napkins, the cream ones, not the ivory, Victoria messaged. Maxwell's managing director is bringing his wife. She's very particular about table settings, Harrison chimed in. Hey sis, make sure everything's perfect. These people could literally make or break my career, Maxwell added. Each notification made me grip my phone tighter, my frustration building with every demanding message. I sat in the break room at the hospital, still in my scrubs after a long shift in the pediatric ward. They hadn't even bothered to ask if I wanted to help. They just assumed I'd show up like always, ready to work behind the scenes while they entertained their important guests. Living in my own apartment on the other side of town was supposed to give me some space from their constant demands. For the most part, it had, except when it came to family events. Then suddenly, the miles between us didn't matter. I was still dependable Evelyn, the pediatric nurse who somehow had to be both too working class to attend their fancy parties and perfectly capable of orchestrating them. I glanced at the confirmation email for my Friday night reservation at Bella's Bistro. The guilt crept in, as it always did. Was it selfish to leave them hanging when they clearly needed help? But then I thought about my day, the hours spent comforting sick children, managing worried parents, handling real emergencies, and their messages about napkin shades and centerpiece heights suddenly seemed almost laughable. My colleague Ruby stopped by my desk, coffee in hand. Family stuff again, she asked, noticing my expression. The usual, I sighed, showing her the stream of messages. Apparently, I'm not good enough to attend my brother's fancy dinner party, but I'm expected to set it up. Ruby's eyes narrowed as she read. And you're still going to help them? I showed her my dinner reservation. Her face broke into a wide grin. Now that's the Evelyn I want to see, she said, raising her coffee cup in a mock toast. It's about time. Opening my phone settings, I muted the family group chat. This time, they could figure it out on their own. On Friday morning, Victoria's name lit up my phone screen. Evelyn, just confirming you'll be here at 4, she said, her voice cheerful but expectant. We're counting on you to make everything perfect before the guests arrive. I paused, watching a young patient wave at me through the pediatric ward's window. Don't worry, Mom, I said, waving back at the child. I'll take care of it. Oh, wonderful, she sighed with relief. You always know exactly how to make things just right. I don't know what we'd do without you. Yeah, I replied softly, I know. As my shift ended, I changed out of my scrubs into the navy blue dress I'd brought to work, applied some light makeup, and grabbed my purse. When I locked my locker and walked through the hospital corridors, several of my colleagues did a double take. Hot date, one of the other nurses asked. Something like that, I smiled, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and excitement. By 7:30, I was seated at my favorite corner table at Bella's Bistro, a glass of Cabernet in hand. The soft jazz music and warm lighting created an atmosphere worlds away from the chaos I imagined was unfolding at my parents' house. The waiter approached with a menu, his manner warm and unhurried. Good evening, are you ready to order? Not quite yet, I replied, but I'll start with the wine, thank you. As he walked away, I couldn't help but picture the scene at home. Victoria would be pacing the kitchen by now, her perfectly styled hair starting to fray at the edges. Harrison would be trying to calm her down with his usual, I'm sure she's just running late. And Maxwell, he'd probably be checking his watch every 2 minutes, muttering about how I was ruining his big night. I took another sip of wine, letting the rich flavor linger. My phone buzzed in my purse, another message in the family group chat. I could practically hear Victoria's voice, where are you? The guests will be here any minute. For the first time in years, I felt no urge to respond. I let the ambient noise of the restaurant wash over me, the gentle clink of glasses, murmured conversations, and soft laughter from nearby tables. The stress of the hospital shift and my family's demands seemed to melt away with each passing moment. When my waiter returned, I ordered the seared scallops I'd been eyeing on the menu for months but had never found the right occasion to try. At my parents' house across town, I could picture the scene unfolding all too clearly. The perfectly appointed dining room would be in disarray, the table settings incomplete, the appetizers still waiting to be plated. Where is she? Victoria would be demanding, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors as she paced. Her voice would have that familiar edge of panic she always got when things weren't going according to plan. She said she'd be here, Harrison would say, attempting to maintain calm while probably struggling with the wine opener. Maybe she got held up at the hospital. Held up? Victoria would snap, gesturing at the unfinished table. It's not like her patients can't wait. She knew how important tonight was for Maxwell. How could she just disappear? Maxwell would be leaning against the doorframe, scrolling through his phone with that superior smirk of his. Honestly, I don't know why you keep relying on her. She's just a nurse, not a professional event planner. Just a nurse? Harrison's voice would be sharp, a rare note of defense in his tone. She saves lives every day, Maxwell. Show some respect. Back at Bella's, my scallops arrived, beautifully plated and smelling divine. As I took my first bite, savoring the perfectly caramelized exterior, my phone vibrated again. I glanced at the screen. 3 missed calls from Victoria, 2 from Harrison, and a series of increasingly frantic messages in the family group chat. The old Evelyn would have felt guilty, would have rushed to fix everything. But tonight, as I sat in the warm glow of the restaurant, I felt something else entirely: peace. The scene at my parents' house was exactly as I'd imagined, only worse. The dining room table was a mess of mismatched place settings and crooked centerpieces. The expensive candles Victoria had bought remained unlit in their holders. "Where are the napkin rings?" Victoria's voice echoed from the kitchen, tinged with desperation. "Evelyn always handles the napkin rings." "I found some," Harrison called back, fumbling with silver rings that didn't quite match. They'll have to do." Maxwell emerged from his phone call, his face flushed with anger. "The managing director just texted. They're 5 minutes away. This is a complete disaster." "Maybe if you'd helped instead of just standing there complaining," Harrison muttered, surprising everyone with his sharpness. Meanwhile, I was savoring every bite of my tiramisu at Bella's, the layers of coffee-soaked ladyfingers and mascarpone melting on my tongue. Across the room, an elderly couple was celebrating their anniversary, their genuine joy a stark contrast to the artificial perfection my family always strived for. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from Harrison. "We should have appreciated you more, Evelyn. This isn't just about napkins and place settings, is it?" I read the message twice, feeling a mix of vindication and something else, hope, maybe. For the first time, someone in my family seemed to understand that my absence wasn't about table settings or being busy at the hospital. It was about years of being valued only for what I could do for them, never for who I was. I took another bite of tiramisu, letting the rich flavors ground me in the present moment. Tonight wasn't about teaching them a lesson or seeking revenge. It was about finally choosing myself. I woke up to the gentle weekend sunlight filtering through my apartment windows, feeling surprisingly light. My phone showed no barrage of angry messages or missed calls, just a single text from Harrison. "Can we talk over coffee today?" I made my morning coffee and sat by the window, watching the early joggers pass by on the street below. For once, there was no weight of family obligations hanging over me, no mental checklist of tasks I needed to complete for someone else's perfect event. By mid-morning, I met Harrison at our local coffee shop, Moonbeams. He was already there when I arrived, looking unusually casual in jeans and a sweater instead of his usual business attire. "Hey, Evelyn," he said, his voice gentle. "I ordered your usual vanilla latte, extra shot." I slid into the seat across from him. "Thanks, Dad." "I owe you an apology," he started, his fingers tapping nervously on his coffee cup. "Last night, it made us realize how much we've taken you for granted. Especially your mother and me." I took a slow sip of my latte, letting his words sink in. "It's not just about last night, Dad. It's about years of being treated like the family stagehand." "I know," he sighed, meeting my eyes. "We relied on you because you were always so capable, so willing to help. But we never stopped to think about how it made you feel, being excluded from the actual events you worked so hard to create." We talked for nearly an hour, really talked, in a way we hadn't done in years. He listened as I explained how it felt to be deemed not good enough to attend their functions but good enough to work at them. How Maxwell's constant dismissal of my career in nursing stung, especially after the grueling years of training and the emotional toll of working in pediatrics. Later that day, Ruby stopped by my apartment, bringing her signature crisis or celebration pizza, extra cheese, extra gossip. "So," she said, flopping onto my couch, "give me all the details. How was your dinner? How bad was the fallout?" "The dinner was amazing," I told Ruby, grabbing a slice of pizza. And the fallout, well, Dad actually apologized. Like, really apologized. Ruby's eyes widened. Harrison Kent apologized? The man who once said sorry was a sign of weakness in the corporate world? I know, right? I laughed, then grew serious. He seemed to really understand why I did what I did. It wasn't just about missing one dinner party. As we talked, my phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. We need to talk, Evelyn. Lunch tomorrow? I showed the message to Ruby, who raised an eyebrow. Are you going to go? I think so, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt about it. It's time we had an honest conversation. Just remember, Ruby said, pointing her pizza slice at me for emphasis, you're not their event coordinator. You're a pediatric nurse who helped 3 kids through their chemo treatments just this week. Don't let them make you feel small. The next day, I met Victoria at a small cafe near the hospital. She was already seated when I arrived, looking slightly less polished than usual. Your father said you had a good talk, she began, stirring her untouched coffee. He made me realize some things. Like what? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Like how we've been treating you, she said, looking uncomfortable. Always expecting you to help, but never including you. It wasn't fair, Evelyn. You're our daughter, not our personal assistant. I felt my chest tighten at her words. That's all I've wanted you to understand, Mom. I love helping when I can, but I need to be valued for who I am, not just what I can do for the family. A new message appeared on my phone, family dinner next Saturday. Nothing fancy, just us. Would love to have you there as a guest, not help. Love, Mom. I read the message twice, noting the difference in tone from her usual demands. When I arrived at their house that Saturday, the table was already set, not perfectly, but with clear effort. Victoria greeted me with a hug, wearing casual clothes instead of her usual formal attire. Everything's ready, she said, leading me to the living room. Come in and relax. We're so glad you could make it. The dining table had slightly mismatched plates and uneven place settings, but it felt more genuine than any of their perfectly orchestrated events. Harrison was in the kitchen, managing the appetizers himself, while Maxwell lounged on the couch, surprisingly subdued. During dinner, I found myself actually enjoying the conversation. I shared stories about my work in pediatrics, and for the first time, my family seemed genuinely interested. Even Maxwell asked questions about my patients without his usual condescending tone. You know, Victoria said as we were having dessert, I never really understood what you do at the hospital. But hearing about those children, it's incredible work, Evelyn. Later that evening, as I helped her bring coffee cups to the kitchen, my choice this time, not an expectation, she touched my arm gently. I'm really glad you came tonight, she said softly. Not just to help, but to be here. With us. The words caught me off guard, but I could tell she meant them. On my drive home, I reflected on how much had changed. My family wasn't perfect, and they probably never would be, but they were trying. For the first time, I felt like they saw me not just as someone they could rely on, but as a person with her own life, career, and boundaries. Back in my apartment, I curled up with a book and a cup of tea, feeling content. The nurse who had walked out of their dinner party weeks ago was still here, stronger, more confident, and finally free to be herself. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in our family story.